Terry is an international speaker, consultant, and mission-critical facilities expert who works for Sapient Services, LLC. He has experience in nuclear, manufacturing, data center, defense, construction, and power generation industry. His industries include cycling, skiing, and traveling. Terry is married to Linda, who is also joining as a new member today. Linda is a managing member of Fast Forward Finances, LLC. After 25 years as a court reporter, Linda's natural talents found the perfect venue for expression, editing books and online content. She has developed a deep passion to help people understand personal finance, eliminate debt, and build for retirement. She enjoys riding bicycles with Terry, traveling, sailing, cooking, and history. Welcome, Linda and Terry. We're excited to have such a talented couple join us.
Thank you, Ross and Molly. A first for Club 99. Dual new spousal member. That's so cool. Our new member streak is still alive at 11 weeks. Last week doesn't count, so we're going to keep it rolling. Congrats, Terry and Linda. Welcome to Club 99. Next is an update on the Camp Alderscape Fish Fry by Wendy Wood.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Oh, thank you. The Camp Alderscape Fish Fry is right around the corner. It's less than 2 weeks away on Sunday, October the 16th. It is back in person, which is the best news of all. They've got lots of fun things planned for all of the attendees. In addition to the fish and all the fixings, they're going to have art crawl, a carousel, different kinds of music, and a fishing derby. So as you can imagine, it's going to take a lot of manpower to put this event on, and I was told we're going to need 150 volunteers. You'll be happy to know that we've recruited 100 volunteers already, which is fantastic. I've had 12 Club 99ers commit to volunteering, which I'm very grateful for, and I would like to give a special shout out to Barry Simon, Melissa Hendricks, and Jennifer Cobb. When I spoke last time, they went back to their employers and then they gathered big groups of teams to come help with the event. So thank you to them. We're so close to reaching our goal. So if you're interested in participating in the event, please contact me. I'll be here after the meeting, or you can call or text or email me. There are 2 shifts available for the half day. 10:30 to 1 p.m. and there is a 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. shift. Or if you're feeling super energetic, you can volunteer for the whole day from 10:30 to 4. And it's a ton of fun. It's a great community service project, and it's a great way to spend the time with your fellow Rotarians. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. What she didn't say is you can also buy tickets. So please look at your QR code and flyers on the tables. They're $20 for individual tickets, or family packs of 4, $65. Please buy your tickets today. This has been a Rotary program going back, I guess, nearly 39 years this year. So it's something that's important to all of Rotary. It's not just Club 99. So please help us support this amazing event and what it means for the folks in our community that are impacted by Camp Alderscape. Now I'd like for Dunbar Principal Quentin Kane and Dunbar Committee Chair Dan Parker to join us for a special presentation.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. All right. First, I just want to say again, thank you to everyone for the support that has been given to Dunbar Madden Middle School. It means a lot to us. We had a great back to school bash that has really propelled us into a strong school year of getting everyone involved and prepared to have, making sure our students are successful. So we do have a presentation here for Mr. Don Cole, if he'll come up for us for a moment. We have something that we want to give him just to show him some, say, gratification and thankfulness for what he has done for us. And as he comes up, I'm gonna say this, if you missed the back to school bash, man, he cooked us up a treat. And I'm telling you, and we'll also be having a tailgating. That's right. We'll also be having a tailgating event this evening at Quigley Stadium as the Dunbar Madden Middle School gentlemen play Episcopal today. And Mr. Cole is going to be cooking for us again. So we just say thank you, thank you, thank you for what you continue to do for us here at Dunbar Madden Middle School. Oh, we got so much for you. We got so much for you.
We're talking about coal-driven grilling. You know, this isn't propane gas. This is the real deal. And we have prepared a grilling and chilling Don Cole Club 99 Grill Master. Another first. He's the first grill master in Rotary Club in our over 100 years of existence. Come see us tonight for the tailgate at 4:30, 5 o'clock. The game starts at 7. Take as much of that game as you want. It's going to be a good one.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. That's amazing. Don, look forward to seeing you tonight. Wear purple if you got it. That's team colors. If you were a dinner party host last week, will you stand so we can thank you for the amazing evening many of us had last Tuesday? If you missed it, it was on you because it was incredible. And hopefully we can continue to make this an annual event or biannual if that's what future presidents choose to do. But I loved it. I always have, and I hope those who actually took the time to join us last Tuesday enjoyed it as well. Thank you very much. Next week, we'll have our annual Little Rock Fire Awards presentation. It's a great opportunity to illuminate the rock in the way that we showcase the amazing work that the heroes do at our Little Rock Fire Department. So please come join us next Tuesday. It's really important that we have a great attendance at that event. Special thanks to co-chair Elizabeth Cloxton and her committee. It's going to be fantastic. So hope to see you next Tuesday. District 6150 Foundation Banquet honoring David Menz, our new district governor, Club 99er, and featuring the 20th anniversary of our Romania project with Heifer International will be held at the Heifer campus the evening of October 27th. So please mark the date, and we have several seats available for Club 99ers. So if you would like one of those, let Karen or Lael know. We'd love to get you signed up, and hopefully we'll have so many that want to come that we'll buy more tables. We'd love for you to participate and have a really strong support for Club 99er, David Menz, our district governor. And now I'd like to tell you about our Illuminating the Rock story. As many of you know, I will spend my year as president during our tricentennial telling unique stories about our region's past 300 years. With our national speaker being so prominently associated with food insecurity issues and challenges faced by many of our most vulnerable citizens, and with all the tragic scenes we've recently witnessed coming out of Florida, Puerto Rico, and the East Coast, I'd like to share with you the story of the Great Flood of 1927, our state's most destructive and costly flood ever, and one of the worst in our nation's history. The Great Flood of 1927 afflicted Arkansas with a greater amount of devastation both human and monetary, than all the other affected states in the Mississippi River Valley. It covered about 6,600 square miles, with nearly half of all of our 75 counties underwater, some as much as 10 to 30 feet. According to an Encyclopedia of Arkansas entry, the flood had a devastating impact on Arkansas's food supply, both immediately after and in the long term. Rich Arkansas farmland was covered with sand, coated in mud, or simply washed away. Almost twice as much farmland was flooded in Arkansas as in Mississippi and Louisiana combined. The Canadian snowmelt had already swollen the Mississippi River Basin that April as record rainfall poured down in Arkansas, with more than 7 inches falling on Little Rock in just a few hours. With the ground already soaked, there was no place for it to go. Lakes, rivers, and stream beds were full. The Mississippi backed up into the Arkansas, the White, and the St. Francis rivers, and every levee between Fort Smith and Little Rock failed under the enormous surge of water. Much of Arkansas remained underwater through the spring and summer and into September. Farmers could not plant crops. The carcasses of thousands of dead animals lay rotting in stagnant pools. Mosquitoes found perfect conditions to breed that summer, carrying malaria and typhoid to refugee camps already burdened with dysentery and the threat of smallpox. With the Mississippi River remaining at flood stage for a record 153 days, the Red Cross maintained refugee camps for flood victims through September, when many people, Black and white, were finally able to return to their devastated land to attempt to survive the winter and start anew with virtually nothing. Then U.S. Commerce Secretary Herbert Hoover called the flood America's greatest peacetime disaster and said the disaster felt by Arkansas farmers, planters, and residents of river lowlands was of epic proportions. Ironically, capitalizing on his newfound notoriety, Hoover would go on to win the presidency the next year, defeating Al Smith of New York and his running mate, Senator Joe T. Robinson of Arkansas, of which Little Rock's Robinson Auditorium is named. As in most disasters, the 1927 flood saw the best and worst of humanity. Author John M. Barry, in his famous book, Rising Tide, was quoted as saying, "Their struggle began as one of man against nature. It became one of man against man. Honor and money collided. White and black collided. Regional and national power structures collided. The collisions shook America." The impact of the Great Flood can't be understated. But there is some good that came from it. Hopefully you were expecting that. It drew national attention to the plight of sharecroppers, Black and white, and led to a mass migration of Black sharecroppers who headed north to look for jobs and a new life in Detroit and Chicago and other cities. Mechanization and corporate farming would later replace their labor. The after effects of the flood and the Great Depression that would follow helped spur on federal efforts to be more responsive to national disasters, like what we're witnessing now after Hurricane Ian. And it helped lead to federal efforts to build dams and hydroelectric power in Arkansas and other states, including the growth and further development of communities like Hot Springs and Mountain Home, and later Heber Springs and others, and the inevitable tourism and recreational infrastructure that would follow. Closer to home, here in Little Rock, federal legislation also bolstered the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers' efforts to tame the mighty Mississippi and all her tributaries, including our own Arkansas River. Their comprehensive levee system and dredging efforts have helped enhance our role as a port city and the growth of our industrial park at the Port of Little Rock, arguably America's best connected inland port. The port currently includes 45 employers and approximately 8,000 employees from 23 counties, with more to come. It has also propelled our continued growth as one of the nation's leading transportations and logistics hubs with multiple points of connectivity, river, rail, roads, and runways, right here in America's heartland. And that's our not so illuminating the rock story for this week. So thank you. And now I'd like for Sarah Riffle to introduce our featured guest speaker. Sarah?
Thank you, Denver. We at the Arkansas Food Bank are so excited to have Claire with us today. It has been a visit long in the making, and we know that she is so busy, and we really appreciate her taking time out of her schedule to come visit with all of us today. I also want to say a quick thank you to Denver and Lael and Karen for helping facilitate this visit. We've been working on it for a few months now, so thank you guys for your hard work. So let me tell you all a little bit about Claire Babineau-Fontenot. She is the CEO of Feeding America. As Chief Executive Officer, Claire oversees the nation's largest domestic hunger relief organization and second largest U.S. charity, according to Forbes. Feeding America is a nationwide network of 200 food banks and 60,000 food pantries and meal programs. Together, the Feeding America network provides more than 4 billion meals to more than 46 million people across the United States and supports programs that improve food security for the families we serve. Prior to joining Feeding America, Claire spent 13 years as a part of Walmart's leadership team, with her most recent role being Executive Vice President and Global Treasurer. In this role, she had global responsibility for tax, treasury operations, capital markets, investor relations, global risk management, casualty and self-insurance leading teams across 28 countries and over 1,000 associates worldwide. As a Louisiana native, Claire has been entrusted with the leadership of teams for nearly 3 decades. Before Walmart, she was partner in charge of the Baton Rouge office and tax practice leader for Adams and Reese LLP, one of U.S. News and World Report's best law firms. Earlier in her career, she was dispute resolution practice group leader for the Southwest region at PwC, formerly PricewaterhouseCoopers, and an assistant secretary for the Office of Legal Affairs for the state of Louisiana. With a deep personal commitment to strengthening communities, Claire has been an avid volunteer and board member. She has volunteered in the fight against hunger and other causes since her youth. Later, she served on a number of nonprofit boards, including the court-appointed Special Advocates for Children, the Board of Directors and Audit Committee for the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and the Board of Trustees and Finance and Audit Committee for the National Urban League and the National Association of Black Accountants. She was also on the Corporate Advisory Board for the Association of Latino Professionals for America. And additionally, she served on the Global Board of Directors and Executive Committee of the Walmart Foundation. Her board experience also includes the board and the audit committee for Walmart Chile SA, chair of the board of directors for Atlas Technical Consultants, an audit committee member and nominating and governments committee chair at Chara Solutions. Claire was also named one of Time's 100 most influential pioneers, leaders, titans, artists, and icons of 2020. Claire holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Louisiana in Lafayette, a Juris Doctor from Southern University Law Center in Baton Rouge, and a Master of Laws in Taxation from Southern Methodist University, Dedman School of Law in Dallas. Everyone, please help me welcome Claire Babineau-Fontenot. Working? Ooh, there they
Oh,
are.
yeah.
We're hot.
It's working. I would understand if after such a long introduction, people, their lunch were over and they had to go. But I'm really excited to be back in Arkansas. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course, we're happy you're here. So we are going to do a fireside chat. And I've got some topics that I'm going to allow Claire to visit with you all about. But as she and I were talking before the presentation, we really want this to be engaging with the audience as well. So as we go through these topics, if any of you have pertinent questions to what we're discussing, we will do a Q&A at the end, but feel free to raise your hand and jump in. We're just going to have a chat amongst us all. So, all right, let's get started. So Claire, with your background, obviously you all heard that she worked for Walmart for many years, so she does have deep ties to the state of Arkansas. Tell us a little bit about how your background has led you to the role of CEO at Feeding America.
I'd be happy to. So let me begin by talking about my personal background, and then maybe a little bit about my professional background, and then why I sincerely believe that I have the privilege to be sitting here right now with all of you, because those are connected. And so I often ask audiences to guess what I mean when I say I'm from a large family. And unless you know, in which case I'd say, please don't answer. I'd like other people who have never heard of this tall lady with that ridiculous French last name. What do you think? How many brothers and sisters would you think I have? 8, 11, 12, 15. No, in fact, I could take like a 10, put it in front of a 7. Yeah, now this is about the time that people say, wait, maybe I didn't understand what she said. Wouldn't that be 107? Yes, it would be 107. Okay. And then people who took biology classes say, no, my children, by the way, were largely educated in the great state of Arkansas, and they know that math doesn't work too well either. Through biology, adoption, and fostering, my parents are mom and dad, or my mother was, to 108 children, including the very, very privileged me. I bring it up because nothing else about me makes any sense if you don't understand that first. That the normal path into our home was because something was desperately wrong at the home you were born to. I have witnessed firsthand what food insecurity means. Even in this extraordinary country, richest country in the history of civilization, I've seen the devastating impact of food insecurity on children, their frail bodies. But I've also seen the extraordinary restorative power of food, not only on their bodies, but on their spirits. I've come to realize that people tend to believe that they get what they deserve. So when they have little, they believe that's because they deserve little. When they have much, they feel worthy. So I've gone about my life knowing this my whole entire life. There was never a moment of consciousness that I had where that was not a part of what I understood. And I kept getting these chances to do stuff. I've always been good at math. Maybe a little that rubbed off on my daughter, who's back at the University of Arkansas getting an econ degree. I get to see her tomorrow, yay. But I keep sending money to Arkansas, so now I'm coming with it. My son graduated from University of Arkansas too, by the way, Fayetteville, as I think it's affectionately referred to. But I kept getting these chances. My grandparents on both sides were sharecroppers. When you talked Denver about that flood, one of the tragic elements of our past is that my maternal grandparents were not sharecroppers before the flood. The flood broke and the waters from the Atchafalaya River Basin flowed into the community they lived in because they didn't have the rights that others did. When they left, there were squatters on their land, and they had no civil rights through which they could go to the courts and reclaim it. And then my grandparents on the maternal side became sharecroppers. But I learned so much from them about hard work, about others before self. And I kept getting chances. My parents didn't graduate high school. I got a chance to graduate high school. Got an opportunity to go to college, to undergrad. Got a chance to go to law school. Got a chance to go back to law school, which some of you may have heard me say my mom never understood in her whole life. She was like, what was wrong with that first law degree? I got these chances at work. The last job I applied for was in 1989. And I got tapped on the shoulder every job since. Everything you said in that really too long bio, we need to talk the next time. But everything in there, they were people tapping me on the shoulder, seeing something in me and giving me a chance to go do things that no one else in my family had ever had the privilege to do. And I kept saying yes. Among those who saw something in me was Walmart. I had been outside counsel to Walmart, living in Louisiana, and they asked me to come in-house. The whole time I was there, what extraordinarily rich experience I had at Walmart. They saw things in me I didn't see in myself, gave me chances that I didn't know anyone else who got. And I kept saying yes. And then in 2016, I went to a routine executive physical, and I learned that I had cancer. And then everything changed. I was in the best shape of my life. I thought I just started running. I thought I was physically fit. The only worry I had, well, it wasn't actually a worry. I was looking forward to the stress test that they were going to give me, because I'm like, for the first time, I'm going to nail this stress test. 15 minutes on a treadmill? I could do more than that. Never imagined I'd find out that I had cancer. My prognosis from the start was brilliant, excellent. I had access to wonderful medical professionals, but something deep inside me had to notice. I don't get always. None of us do. How can I walk with all that I've known my whole life and not engage more deeply? I'm a very, very privileged person. I know that in many ways, the work that I did before afforded me the privilege of being able to walk away from a great for-profit job and make a decision at a moment in time that for the rest of my life, I would work in the nonprofit space. And I know this to be true, however long that is, I will work for the rest of my life in the nonprofit space. So that is my journey to here. With one additional step. You mentioned that I was on the executive committee for the foundation board when I was at Walmart. While I was there, Katrina hit actually the year after I came to Bentonville, 2005, almost exactly a year after I joined. And I thought about going back to Louisiana because of all the devastation, and I felt guilty that I was living this wonderful life in Northwest Arkansas, and we couldn't find members of my family for a long time. And then I realized what Walmart was doing about Katrina. And I realized that they were investing in a particular organization that I had actually been familiar with. When I was originally familiar with them, they were called Second Harvest, now called Feeding America. And Walmart decided to double down on Feeding America while I was there. And I knew why. I got to understand the extraordinary breadth and reach of this organization. And as I made the transition, not knowing exactly where it's going to go, as fate would have it, as I hope destiny would have it, they were looking for a CEO, and they found me. So, long way of answering that question. But I think all of it is important, so that I hope that when I say to this group of Rotarians. When I say to Bobby, as an example, it's not that I've never seen that pin before, it's that I have seen that pin before. When I say, I love that pin, it's I love what you stand for as Rotarians. Others above self. I love that you actually position the word others on the top and self on the bottom. When I share all that context with this audience, so that when I say thank you to you, that you understand that that thank you is personal to me. That when you guys came together as a community, you've done it before COVID, but oh my goodness, did you do it during. The support that you provided, the way you stepped into what it means to be a neighbor. If you remember nothing else from what I say, I hope you remember that there are people who are deeply grateful to you and that I am one among them. Thank you to all of you. When you support Rhonda Sanders, an absolutely extraordinary person, human, and a transformational leader who's been working at the Arkansas Food Bank in your community, serving your community shoulder to shoulder, rolling up her sleeves, along with this extraordinary team, along with you. We're grateful. I'm grateful. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think that rolls beautifully into the relationship between Feeding America and the local member food banks. So as I mentioned, there are 200 member food banks of the Feeding America Network. And I wanted Claire to have the opportunity to talk about the impact that the national organization is able to make on a local level, because I don't necessarily think that everyone gets to see that from a visibility standpoint, but the investment that the national network makes in all of the member food banks, but we feel, of course, in Arkansas is so deep. And so I want you all to hear from Claire exactly how that relationship works.
Well, the best arbiters of whether or not we're effective in what we do would be members of our local teams who hopefully feel the impact of our engagement inside of your local communities. Probably the best thing that we do at the national level is listen. We are fundamentally a grassroots organization. We support a grassroots organization of human beings who are living inside of communities. At the national level, we don't pretend to know what it means to live in Arkansas. We don't pretend to know what it means to be of this community inside of Arkansas, which I personally know Jonesboro is not Little Rock, which is not Bentonville, right? But you know it. So one of the most important things that we do is that we work hard to understand the unique issues that communities are confronting and invest in that understanding. So we provide funding, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I figure the amount that they pay in membership dues, it's not hundreds of millions. No, don't think so. So I think at least we earn the membership dues that we receive, but hundreds of millions of dollars of investments in local communities, engaging as neighbors with their community partners is one of the things that we do. So we listen, we make investments, we raise funds at a national level, and then we funnel those funds into communities. One of the reasons that people choose, for instance, to invest in Feeding America, and sometimes they say, well, why would I invest in Feeding America versus investing in the food bank here in Arkansas? Please don't do that.
Yes, please don't.
Yeah, please don't. Start by investing in your own backyard. We are not either or, we're yes and. So start by investing in your backyard. We have a locator on our website at feedingamerica.org where you can put in the zip code for the community that you care the most about. And what's going to pop up is the name of a food bank that's serving that community, that lives in that community, that's on the ground in that community. Start there. And if you have a little more to spare and you want to invest in an organization that has its finger on the pulse of where the needs are nationally, then invest with us as well. Because we have a way, we do pulse surveys so that we understand what's happening across the country and you don't have to. And we then invest in those other communities as well. Another thing that we do is, and why I talk about, you actually have two leaders that I think I've already spoken to, and one of them is Rhonda Sanders. One of the things that she's done that is an opportunity for members is among our member food banks, they elect people to represent their voices at the national level. We call that group the NAC. Rhonda has served. Rhonda serves right now on the contract task force. This contract task force is designed not only to think about how the national office relates to members, but how members relate to themselves and how members and the national office relate to communities. Rhonda has served. Rhonda serves with distinction. So not only does she serve this community and her backyard and yours, but her insights help to inform the work that we do across the whole country. We don't have to reinvent wheels at Feeding America. People are doing awesome things all across the country. We get to understand what those are, share them in other communities, and then help them to translate that and customize it for the communities that they're in. And then another really important part of the work that we do is advocacy. There was a White House conference on hunger, health, and nutrition that happened last week. We got to participate very actively, most importantly, in what they would talk about at the conference and whom it is that would have a voice there. No other organization in this space touches tens of millions of people the way that we do. So we had this awesome opportunity to listen to the people who are actually coming to us and ask them, what do you want? What would you say our policies should be? So we had first ever 36,000 people participated actively. They told us what they wanted. We then submitted that to the President of the United States of America, along with members of his cabinet. And then we saw evidence that what they said made its way into the policy platform that came out of that conference. Now, it was a little weird that they said what the positions were before the conference started, but that's another conversation. What we're glad we got those voices in early so that they were able to be impactful. So that's a really important part of what we do. And then I hope you ask me about what nonpartisan means, because I'd love to talk to this audience about that too.
Yeah, feel free. Yeah.
Are you asking me what does nonpartisan mean?
Tell us a little bit more about that,
Okay,
Claire.
great. Well, you know, I talked about policy, right? And how important it is. I'll ask this group, and usually the answer to whatever question I ask, it's going to be Feeding America or food banks. So I'll just give you the answer, the key to the quiz in advance. But we actually, members of Congress are polled on which voices they trust the most. And do you know which group is consistently on the top of the list? You are a smart crowd. There you go. Feeding America, not me, not the national office. Food bankers, our food bank members. And you know why I believe that's true? Because we are nonpartisan. That is a foundational principle of the work that we do that must always be foundational to the work that we do. There are enough divisive things that separate people across the country. We will not participate. I think this building was intended, I know what people say it looks like, but I think it was intended to be a bridge. What a perfect place for Feeding America to be talking to Rotarians. Feeding American can and works hard to be a bridge. But what we mean by nonpartisan is we are very well positioned because we touch, like last year, 53 million people turned to the charitable food system for help. In 2020, 60 million people. Though you talked about the minimum number of meals that we provide, which is 4 billion. Do you know how many meals people like the ones we have in our company right here, do you know how many meals they provided in the middle of a global health pandemic? When there are supply chain issues, when there were meaningful risks to their lives. I am not being hyperbolic. This is not an exaggeration. People really did not know what it would mean for their lives. And they were out there feeding people nonetheless. You know how many meals they provided? Not 100 million, not 999, 100 million. Not 1 billion or 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, 6.7 billion meals. That is extraordinary. It does not happen if there aren't people who cross all kinds of bridges in order to be on the other side with their neighbors. It just doesn't happen otherwise. And it does happen that way. So we are well positioned to know whom it is that's experiencing food insecurity, why it is, and what might help. And we stand with people experiencing food insecurity. And sometimes people who self-identify as Republicans do too. And that's wonderful when they do, because they won't have to go looking for us because we're not going to move. We stand with people. When people who self-identify as progressive want to do what we know to be in the interest of people who are facing food insecurity, wonderful, join us, because we will stay with people experiencing food insecurity. We do that unapologetically. And we do that in a data-informed way. And that's the reason I believe that among the most trusted voices in Congress, Republican, Independent, or Democrat, are members, food bank executive directors and CEOs. So thank you for that. Appreciate you.
So I definitely want to expand a little bit on COVID, because COVID was transformational for food banking. It thrust us into a light that we had not previously been a part of on a national scale. And it also pushed us into action where we were forced to react very quickly to a situation that we did not know was coming, like everyone else, and were not at the time prepared for. And that happened at the exact same time to all of the food banks across the country. So we do a lot of work in disaster relief, but one of the things that Rhonda and I have always talked about is that when a disaster happens somewhere in the country, the rest of the network is able to pool and push resources to that part of the country. With COVID, it happened to all of us across the country at the same time. And just like you heard the increase in that number of meals, our food bank alone went from distributing 29 million pounds of food in 2019 to over 40 million pounds of food in 2020. And we did that without preparation, with essentially the same number of staff, and mostly without our volunteer base that we rely heavily on, but due to social restrictions, we were not able to have groups in those congregate type settings. So Claire, can you talk a little bit about, on the national scale, how COVID really did affect food banking in general, and what kind of changes you see affecting us long-term from that?
Yes, so COVID certainly came as a big, ugly, dark gray cloud. But it did have some streaks of silver in it. So I don't have to belabor the dark cloud part. You lived it. We all lived it as a site. We lived it as a planet together. But some of the things that it required of us as a network that I think was healthy for us was I had been told when I joined, by the way, I just celebrated my 4th anniversary 2 days ago. Yay, me. Woohoo.
Yay.
And I was told when I joined Feeding America that if you want to see our network at its best, see us during a disaster. And I thought, how sad. How sad. And I wondered, well, why would that be? What COVID did was it did what disasters do short term. It's had us to adjust to long term. What other disasters do short term. It had us to focus on what mattered the most. Titles don't matter the most. Impact matters the most. Who gets to be the arbiter of whether or not we're making an impact? The people in the line get to be the arbiters of that question. It sharpened us. It accelerated how we gather data. It positioned us to be able to get 36,000 voices for the White House conference. I don't believe the White House conference would have happened on hunger. It hadn't happened in 53 years. I don't believe it would have happened this year, but for the work that the network did that was so obvious to the world during COVID. So it helped to highlight the fact, one, that there are tens of millions of people who struggle with food insecurity, even when there's not a global health pandemic. And I've been told that empathy is an acting emotion. Sympathy, But when you can see yourself in that line, it changes what you want to do to ensure that nobody else is in it. And there was something about in the pandemic when there could be no stigma, right? When all of us could say, there's no earned hunger there. What if overnight, the business that you relied upon for your income were closed? What if you're a small business person and you couldn't open your doors? What would you do? How many paychecks would you have to miss in order to be in that line? So I believe it has accelerated. In fact, we are data informed. I have reason to believe that it has accelerated the rate of empathy in the country. That people finally are saying, asking, instead of asking, why are you in that line? Focusing instead on what can we do collectively to ensure that you don't need to be? So I think that was huge. And then we've accelerated the rate of technology, how we engage in direct distribution of food. More of our members who used to rely exclusively on pantries, some of our members did for direct distribution. Some of them now have figured out how to do it in a really efficient and dignified way with the community. So there are many, many ways, lots of little streaks of silver coming out of it. And even as I think about the White House conference again, coming up with a plan is not, it's important, but executing the plan is what's more important. I believe we have the public trust because people like you earned it. And I believe we now have a moment in time where we get to leverage that trust for really, really significant change. And I'm confident that we will.
And I want to make sure that we leave a couple of minutes for Q&A. But last question I want to ask you, Claire, is with all of that that you just mentioned, what do you see are the biggest issues facing food banking for the foreseeable future for the next coming years?
Yeah, I think often, unfortunately, people, instead of thinking about yes ands, think either ors. So one of the things that I hear, food banking is terrible. It's awful. They just give canned food. The food is terrible for people. They're really just trying to sustain their own fiefdoms. Those are people who have never met the people I know. They must have never in their lives met any of these people or you, because that simply is qualitatively and quantitatively false. People have arcane notions of what food banking is based upon what they thought it used to be. So one of our challenges is confirmation bias. And people already think they know who we are. And on certain aspects, they're correct, others, they're wrong. Like, would they know that this community right here, for instance, there's this thing called Foods to Encourage. Anybody familiar with that? Foods to Encourage. It's a measure that we have in food banking that speaks to making certain that you care and pay attention to the nutritional density of the food that you provide. Do you know what percentage of the food provided by your local food bank meets the F2, we call them F2Es, meets the Foods to Encourage deadline? So that would be produce, protein, dairy. Nearly 70%. Is that what you thought before you came into the room? Probably not. So that's one of our biggest issues, is helping people to open their minds to who food bankers always have been, and to the fact that food banking is continuously changing and that it's not either or. So let me talk about the other side, which is this notion that somehow food bankers, again, are only focused on the here and now, and that we should not focus on the here and now. Well, we should focus on the here and now, and we should focus on the long term. And we are committed to both. And our network is committed to both. Our aspiration is an America where no one is hungry. Our aspiration is thriving communities. Foundational to thriving communities is people having access to the nutrition that they need. When I come to audiences like this, Rotarians, you tend to be a diverse group of people. You tend to represent business interests and the economy. You tend to also have a healthy smattering of nonprofit, sometimes public sector. Everyone should care about this because it impacts all of us. It impacts education. It impacts health. It impacts the economy. It impacts your ability to get good jobs if you're the person seeking employment. It impacts your ability to maintain a job if you're seeking employment. And it impacts an employer's ability to find talent and to retain talent. This is one of those things that is inherently a 100% issue. It's one of the things we could choose to agree is important. And when this country, which I am unapologetic about as well, I choose to live in these United States of America. This is the country that has provided me with the extraordinary opportunities that no one else in my family ever had. I love this country, and I believe in what this country will do when it decides that something's unacceptable. So my hope is that we have decided that hunger is unacceptable. Once that happens, the rest of it's going to take care of itself.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Claire. And thank you so much for your thoughtful insight and for sharing that with the group today. I want to open up the floor to any questions that anyone might have. Okay, yep, go ahead.
It's not a question, it's a statement that I would like everyone to think about. I'm so privileged to be a part of Wesley Clark's Civility and Leadership. And we went to Rhonda's place and we sacked potatoes, sweet potatoes, which I never knew had so many different kinds of sweet potatoes. And we came back and we asked ourselves questions. So we did roundtables on these questions. And one of the, to me, the most important question was, and I think everybody could go home with this thought, is what would the United States look like if there was no hunger? And that question has just stayed with me for the last 3 months. And Rhonda knows how committed I am to the food bank. And I just, that question is just so powerful. What would the world, what would the United States look like? What would Arkansas look like if there was no hunger? And I think that's something we could work on.
Oh,
Thank
I
you.
agree. Thank
I
you. May
appreciate
I
that.
applaud that? Yes,
Thank you.
exactly. And may I just add an element to the back of it? And oh, by the way, we could choose that there be none. It is, we do have the tools. Oh,
Okay, quick one question.
Claire, mention a couple of the mentors that you had over your, especially your high school or undergraduate, graduate that helped to propel you to where you are today.
I'm going to try to make it brief. I'm going to just speak to one. My mother, no question. My mother's with me right here, right now. My mother's with me always. My mother was the eldest of 5 children, the daughter of a sharecropper, did not graduate from high school, but she made sure everybody in her family that followed her did. My mother, who some in some rooms wouldn't have the good sense to invite her into, but she was extraordinary. She spoke broken English. Her first language was Creole French. She was one of the most sophisticated thinkers I know, one of the most impactful people I know. And she never, ever, ever entered a room asking, what will that room be for me? She always asked, what can I be for that room? I will spend the rest of my life trying to make manifest that that woman and I share DNA. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Sarah and Claire. As part of our 300-year anniversary of La Petite Roche, you probably noticed the French name here. There's a little story behind that. We'll talk about it later. But we are doing gifts to all our speakers this year in honor of this namesake tricentennial. And these will, assortment of these gifts will be given to all our Little Rock School District elementary schools and resource centers. And they'll be, your name will be among those when we're giving them at the end of the year. Anyway, as a token of our appreciation, we have one for you today. So I'd like to present this to you. And we also have the state's highest award that we can give to a visitor to Arkansas. I know you've lived here, but this is also the Arkansas Traveler. And it's, I know you love the Tigers, but you apparently have some Razorbacks in your family now. But as you travel around the country, this is in the spirit of saying amazing things about your time and travels to Arkansas. So we hope you'll continue to do that.
Thank you.
So. We've also got you a pin for our La Petite Roche as well, so I'll get that to you. Later today, of course, the Dunbar Bobcats tailgate. Please show up for that, guys. And next week, our annual Little Rock Fire Awards. Please join us to honor those who serve and protect us every day. And we are adjourned.